I'm Helena Lenihan. I'm Irish and I'm worried about my country. What's bothering me is that there are so many unemployed people in Ireland at the moment. Yes, the Irish government's trying to do something about it, but I'm not convinced that they're evaluating the impact of what they're trying to do about it properly. So I'm interested in using Ireland as my laboratory. However, I think a lot of the lessons I'm going to talk about today and a lot of the issues I'm going to discuss, I think there are transferable lessons in here regardless of country context. So my talk today has three parts really. First of all, I want to talk about the severity of the unemployment situation that we're currently faced with in Ireland. Secondly, I want to look at what the government's doing about it in the form of enterprise policies. Their policies to create jobs for real people. And then finally, I want to talk about how do they know if they're implementing the right type of policies, or do they even care about it? So coming back to the unemployment situation, how severe is it in Ireland at the moment? It's really severe. To put a figure on it, the current unemployment rate in Ireland is 14.2%. What that means is that 1 in 7 people in Ireland are currently unemployed. I'm talking to you here today from the University of Limerick. The University of Limerick is located 5 kilometres from Limerick City. You may have heard of it because it's home to Munster Rugby. And where Munster Rugby supporters go is they go to Thomond Park to watch their team play. At full capacity, the Munster Rugby Stadium houses 26,500 people. So if we were to put all the unemployed people in Ireland into Thomond Park today, we would fill it 16.5 to 17 times. That shows us the severity of the unemployment situation in Ireland. Now, if you cast your mind back to 12 years ago in Ireland, in Q4 in the year 2000 in Ireland, we had an unemployment rate of 3.5%. Obviously, we're doing something wrong and we've a lot of unemployed people. I want to look at solutions. So that brings me to the second part of what I want to share with you today. It's about the solutions to the problems of unemployment in Ireland. One thing you can do is you can introduce enterprise policies. What does that mean? Well, enterprises come in 2 forms. You can have foreign direct investment companies. We have lots of them in Ireland. It's been a strategy of the Irish government since about 1958. Basically, industrialisation by invitation. But I think we've neglected another part of our economy, and that is the indigenous, the Irish-owned companies that can supply jobs for our people. Just to quantify this a little, 99.8% of all Irish companies are what we call small and medium-sized enterprises. They employ less than 250 people. So the government is interested in trying to get these types of firms to create jobs. I was really excited in February when the government introduced what they call an action plan for jobs. I thought this is brilliant. Finally, we've kind of stopped talking about the banks and we're putting a focus on what we call the real economy. That's real people and real jobs. So enterprise policies, they can come in many forms. For example, interventions to encourage people to become entrepreneurs. Interventions by government to help small and medium-sized enterprises. Basically, when I talk about enterprise policies, I'm talking about any policies that help businesses, that help industry, but with the objective of creating jobs either directly or indirectly for the economy. So on a beautiful, bright day in February, I opened up the action plan for jobs and I thought there are 270 recommendations in this action plan. Lots of them are directed at enterprise. They range from things like a loan guarantee credit scheme to interventions that help encourage high-tech companies to export in Ireland. Some would argue there's too many, some would argue there are not enough. What I think is that if they're good enough, that will really help. But as I trawled my way through the document, one thing that I saw scant or very little mention of, and this brings me on to the third thing that I want to talk about today, and that's the evaluation of enterprise policies. If you think about it, the Irish economy is more or less broke at the moment, and we're pouring money into enterprise policy interventions. it would make sense to evaluate the impact of these policies. Enterprise policy evaluation makes sense for three main reasons. First of all, you can see what's the impact of the intervention. Secondly, in these prudent times of fiscal rectitude, you can see, are we getting value for money? And also we can hold the government accountable. But what's far less talked about, but which I think is really interesting, is we can look at, will these policies lead to improvements in our economy? Will we decrease that 14.2% unemployment? In the past, when enterprise policy evaluation has been undertaken in Ireland, it's tended to be undertaken in a very narrow, unidimensional way. Let me give an example. Let's take a particular firm who gets assistance for some kind of an enterprise policy intervention. Up until now, when the government comes to evaluate the impact of that intervention, it looks at the impact at the level of the assisted firm only. For example, does that firm's employment increase? Do they become more innovative? What about their sales and their profitability levels? But it's much more dynamic and much more complex than this. What I would argue for is that in evaluating policies, we need to take a much more socio-economic perspective. What I mean by that is, we need to look at what are the impact on the wider publics. So coming back to that particular firm that gets a type of assistance, I would argue that a holistic evaluation framework would incorporate the following. Displacement effects. That is, the degree to which one firm getting assistance merely puts another firm out of business. We need to look at issues such as deadweight effects. To what degree would the activity have happened anyway without the intervention? We need to look at multiplier effects in a local economy. Because of an intervention, a firm hires more people. But that obviously multiplies more into the economy. Those employed people spend their money in the local pubs and the local restaurants and so on and so forth. We need to look at linkages. To what degree does a grant-aided firm or a firm that gets a particular enterprise policy intervention link up with the other firms in the economy? We also need to look at issues such as I said, wider socioeconomic impact on the environment. Ask the simple question, what is the best alternative use of this money? Believe it or not, but this is true. In the current situation in Ireland, when enterprise policies are evaluated, they're all not made publicly available. That's something we need to do as a matter of urgency. Lots of people say to me, what you're talking about is kind of interesting, but it's going to cost a bucket of money. That's true, but I say look at the research in countries where this has been done. Evaluation in the long run makes sense in terms of value for money. But even if the government says we have no money for the kind of public interest evaluation you're talking about now, one thing they could do, and this costs no money, it just means you sit down and you decide what are the objectives of our enterprise policy interventions. Sitting down and deciding off what the objectives of our policy are costs nothing. But to truly engage in rigorous evidence-based policy evaluation from either ex post or ex ante perspectives, you cannot evaluate, not unless you evaluate against clearly specified objectives. Whereas currently, when I read Irish policy documents about enterprise policies, the objectives are vague and at best opaque. So, to conclude, I'm passionate about the area of unemployment and what we can do for it, and about policy evaluation. And if you have found anything interesting about what I've spoken about today, call to see me at the University of Limerick. I'd be delighted to talk to you.